what amazed me on this journey was it's not just offsetting, which is something that is valuable, but it's what you're providing to the broader community.
Absolutely.
Going once, going twice, sold. You're listening to the Property Pod.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really excited to present our guest for the today. He runs his own Climagap company. Here we are with Byron Munson. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here. Looking forward to running through our podcast together.
Well, look, we're excited to have you.
Live on the air.
We're one person short today, as we've sort of outlined at the start of the show. Aaron normally is pushing the button, so hopefully I can do him justice. But obviously, we wanted to get you in because we've just recently joined up with you guys, and we wanted to get you in to sort of fill everyone in on what is Climagap.
So Climagap's basically being, so I've been in Singapore for 9 years, Australian, worked with, in my last job was more a technology company called Salesforce, that little thing called Salesforce. And so basically what I had was a company that was bought by Salesforce, spent several years there, but realized that I wanted to give something back a little bit more, still a capitalist at heart, but I wanted to actually contribute or have more impact in my day-to-day. So I left Salesforce and ventured out to the world of really doing my own startup. And that's where the idea for Climagap came about. And essentially what it was is we looked across all the different offerings to help people on this or businesses on their sustainability journey. And it was just really, really difficult to join them all up. So we're constantly thinking around our own journey as a startup, but also other SMEs. It's like, how do people actually know to get into this space, navigate it, and make sense of it all? So that's what we've done. We believe we have, anyway, Patrick, for your feedback on this being one of our great clients. But it's basically, we just want to make it really easy. So you jump in, you measure what's your carbon footprint, you have a chat about what business practices you can change so that you can reduce your impact on the environment. And then we have a chat around there's emissions that are sort of unavoidable, like in your particular business, until electric cars are, across the board, it's just going to open house inspections, so on and so forth. So then you look at offset projects in order to help mitigate that carbon.
I was just going to say, I think that's the big point there is, like, for us, it was really hard for us to figure out how to even get into this space. We knew we wanted to be, socially responsible, and we knew that we wanted to be able to start the process, but we just didn't know how to. And obviously that's where you've been able to help fill that gap for us. And it's been, great to have the support to know how to buy carbon offsets and how to figure out what we're actually using on a day-to-day basis as well.
Yeah, and I think also what we find is people go down this path that's the world's best kept secret. And what we do is we've got the ability you get marketing templates, so you can actually go out and tell your customers and your employees about it, because it's great you do this anyway, but why not turn this into a positive for a business, your own business and other people around you, rather than just being something intrinsically yourself. And that's a personal preference for a business, whether they use it as a marketing function or not, but that's the sort of final piece for us.
And when you said before you found that there was just a missing link between people like Pat, because Godwin, I've known Pat a long time, and this has obviously been something you've been passionate about for ages, is so there was a huge gap between people wanting to be able to do it and then being able to do it. And so that's where Climagap has brought that connection. No difference in some ways to someone trying to look for any kind of service and not knowing where to go about it. You're the specialist to connect that business to become on the journey to sustainability. Is that the idea?
That's the idea. That's what we want to do. I think in some ways, Patrick, I'm going to throw this to you, because I think when we first started having conversations, you basically had, from what I understand, you tell people through the journey, but you had the journey that we're trying to solve for, essentially, which I thought was good validation as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been exploring this space probably seriously for the last 12 months. For me personally, obviously running a business and having a young family as well, you start to look at things a little bit differently. And I decided about 12 months ago, we definitely wanted to find a way to offset our carbon, and started doing a lot of research around the process, but found it incredibly hard to figure out. Everyone talks about carbon neutral, but it's not until you start investigating that you realize it's incredibly hard to become carbon neutral, because there's so much regulation around it, which is silly, because for me, as a company that actually wants to do the right thing, you think they would make it easy for you to do it, but they don't. It's incredibly hard. And then you start exploring other different ways out there of, like, just offsetting some carbon or just buying some trees in a rainforest somewhere. And it's really hard to know what is like real, what is fake. Is the money going to end up where it's supposed to be going? And that's where the breakdown for us was. And then to top it off for us as well is how much carbon do we actually put out? And no one could really tell us that answer. And like some people were telling me, Patrick, you've got to get in an independent person to audit your entire company. And then for a company of my size, which is not a giant corporation, the cost of that was just not feasible. So that's where we really struggled. And I think when we came across you guys, when you reached out to us, Byron, having that calculator that you guys have on your website, yes, we can't say we're carbon neutral, but we're able to say we're on our way to that. And, you know, it started, at least the conversation has started in our office, and now we're exploring what we can do to reduce carbon. And we now know what to look for as well, which is what your calculator was really good at figuring out.
And that was, thanks for that, Patrick. I think also, John, about how to make it easy. So as Patrick said, you've got, and everyone has a value, there's a value chain, and everyone has a place in that value chain. There's consultants, do a great job of unearthing what are your business practices, what are you currently doing, what do you need to solve for. Then you do that, and as Patrick said, I've got to buy offsets. Well, where do I get offsets from? You've got people planting trees, and they've got their benefits, but then you've got other projects which we'll get to a little bit later on. But you're supporting, not only you're reducing carbon, you're actually supporting communities and having a broader impact. So, and there are hundreds of these. So it's how do you navigate that? And then to Patrick's point, the calculator. That's why we've reached out. So we've partnered with Berkeley University in California. Universities, because it's it's agnostic in the context. It's populated with all Australian state carbon emissions data. Go in there, tap in your details. It provides you with what, not only what your footprint is for your business, but it benchmarks you against your industry as well, which is quite cool, gives you a bit of insight. But we did that because it took us 7 months to find this calculator. Because again, they're built to solve for a particular business challenge that you need, whereas Berkeley was more just very open, and I mean, it's Berkeley. It gives you that ability to populate it with data as well. So that's what I think we thought was really important. As I said, it's taken us 7 to 8 months to research all these bits and slowly start and pull them together to go to market.
One thing that I wanted to move to is I'd like to understand from your perspective what you see carbon offsetting is. What actually is it? And then obviously we don't want to be a business that just buys some trees. And so what is it that you're talking about where you're creating, like being able for us to invest in options that's much greater than just one specific way of offsetting your carbon?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would start with that by saying all projects are great, because I think people just need to start, right? So if you've got people buying trees, that's absolutely brilliant, and people should do that. There's so many different varieties you can get into this space. And is one better than the other? Well, you could have debates over that for years and years. I think it's just about getting people to jump in.
Yeah. So that so I guess that you talked about values from different companies as well. Obviously, everyone's got a different value set that they'd like to nurture. So it may be, like you said, there was community projects. It could be, commodity projects. So then how is it then a business can choose the direction in which they can offset their carbon using your service?
So basically what we do is, we've teamed up with, and get a little bit technical here for a second, but basically there are offsets. You can buy offsets. There are hundreds of thousands of offsets in the world. What we've done is we've partnered with 2 companies called Vera, VERRA, and another one is called Gold Standard. They are basically, they run their business to align to the UN framework for carbon offsetting in less technical way. So what we do, we first of all be aligned to those 2 frameworks, and we only work with those what they call registries. So that's where they go out and verify that a carbon offset is legitimate, that it's adhering to its goals. They do updates. I think it's every couple of years they go out and have a look at these projects. So we adhere to those, and then you just get a breadth. So you can buy, as I said, offsets. When I first started in this, they were looking at, there's one which is, stopping the Amazon basin from being torn up and deforested, right? So these businesses will go out and they will buy parts of the rainforest, and they'll patrol that and make sure, and they'll actually start reforestation as well. But then you've also got, on the other side is the cook stoves, and the cook stoves are really interesting. They don't sound terribly interesting, but what they do is you're actually stopping someone in these villages, and they're primarily in emerging markets. So the men are out basically and gathering food. Women are at home cooking, looking after the family, so on and so forth, some of those typical roles. But the cook stoves are inside these houses, the traditional ones, they're burning wood. So you're going to cut down trees, bring it in. But then the indirect consequence of having those cook stoves inside the house, because of weather conditions, you cook inside, it's too hot or it's raining, especially in sort of equatorial areas. The smoke from those wood fires creates massive respiratory problems and health problems for the children and for the adults.
Right. Yeah.
And then from there, you get basically it's cascades, and there's no education because I can't leave home because I'm in with the kids, and there's no sex education, this, that, the other. It was very little. These projects, they basically go out and they will fund or subsidize new cooking methods that don't hurt, that are less harmful for the health of the people within the villages. But also they provide sex education, or they're putting roads in to get people to, it could be to the local project, the local wind turbine project, to schools. It's amazing, the breadth. And there's nothing I could single out right now. And I think we're going to go through some projects later on, but it's, what amazed me on this journey was it's not just offsetting, which is something that is valuable, but it's what you're providing to the broader community.
Absolutely.
I think that's something that I didn't actually realize as well was an option. Like you talk to not talk to anyone, but you start to research, and everyone, when you talk about carbon offsetting or you talk about environmental projects, it all comes back to wind turbines or, hydropower options or planting trees. And for me, when I started working with you, Byron, seeing all these other projects out there that had a greater impact on a community as well. So me here in Tasmania, I've got a really good lifestyle, but to be able to offset my carbon and at the same time help a community be better and help a community like have a better life as well as a result, I thought that was astounding. And I just didn't realize it was an option that even existed in these type of projects. So that was something really exciting because we're doing more, or we're trying to do more than just one thing. So that was really exciting.
Just to add something to that as well, Patrick, these projects, they're often privately run businesses, or they're a co-op for a village. And then they will have an NGO, so a not-for-profit company come in and manage them. Could be the UN, could be the World Bank, etc. But when you buy a project, you're not donating. What you're doing is you're helping to fund. So a lot of questions we get, which are very valid, and I've got to say, this is not across all. There are some projects that are more of a charitable donation than others, but the ones that we work with, they're actually going in and the NGO is helping them manage their funds. So it's not a tax deduction. So there's not, and we'd never give tax advice anyway, but the ones we work with, you're actually helping. So with the cook stoves cost $120. So when Patrick and team invested in that particular project, you help reduce the price from $120 down to $40. So they're teaching skills on commerce as well. So anyway, I can bang on about this for hours, but I think I'll drop a full stop there.
To me, I always think that's a sign of a good person to work with, because you actually are interested in the weeds. And I think one of the biggest challenges I would see, especially say from a consumer's perspective, is always, and it's essentially the same too, as if I do want to invest money, even for a charity's sake, is that you want to know that it's actually being used appropriately.
Great. Yeah.
And I think that's why, I liked the fact that you'd partnered with this Vera company and with the Gold Standards company, because it added a bit of transparency. It had somewhere where I could, venture from your website to somewhere else to, investigate projects a little bit more and get a better understanding as to what we were talking about, and knowing that the depth that they sort of run their organizations at, it fills us with a lot more confidence in supporting projects like this.
And the other element too, Byron, is with Climagap, is that, we've got all the decisions and responsibilities that we need to manage. So being able to keep on track with, but this is still something we're, expressly passionate about, but we don't have time to keep updated with all the current information. So that's why we need, that's why the service like yourself is so helpful. It's just like, Byron, all right, help us invest where we want to, and then ensure that it's going to the right place. So I'd assume then that's always something that your company's designed to help stay on top of. Yeah,
and I think it's look, carbon mitigation or carbon offsetting is a great place to start, right? To jump in and go, right, this year, let's just start from day one. We're going to do this. But what our long-term vision is, and especially working with yourselves, is it's about making more informed and sustainable business decisions. So if you're going to, it's been years since I've done this, but keep your real estate license up to speed. You've got to do your courses. So maybe rather than flying somewhere, if it's possible, and you may not want to do it, but if it's possible, put a marker there as well. But if it's possible, do it online, because jumping on a jet and going from Hobart to Melbourne or New South Wales is a huge contributor to offset. So it's just what I'd say is little tweaks that are feasible. That's what helps businesses over time. You want to be smarter with the decisions you're making and your environmental impact, and actually spending less on offsets, because you've made all these great decisions up top.
Well, that's definitely through going through this detailed calculator with you and looking, because I had to go with Paul, my manager, do a lot of research, get a lot of information to be able to plug into this calculator to figure out what we were going to offset. And looking through that, we'll realize, well, these are things that we can change over the next 12 months. So there are improvements here that just minimize the amount of carbon that we actually are outputting. And that as well was kind of exciting, because I think as we go on, and like you've sort of indicated, is that I think we will look differently once we start monitoring this on a more regular basis of the improvements that are out there that can be made. And just simple things like, implementing a better recycling system here in the office to ensure that we're recycling a load, or looking at how much we're printing out on a daily basis. Because after cars, the biggest thing that we use in this office is printing and electricity. So are there ways that we can minimize or improve our use around that here in the office? And I'd love to say that, we'll be able to be amazing and reduce as much as we can, but yeah, it's just a journey that we've started, and it's going to be exciting to see where it goes over the next couple of years as we become more aware of what we're doing.
And also too, there's no point in guilting ourselves into not making any changes at all. I mean, obviously we are still limited by the availability of technology and the means in which we have to do business. But if we develop the discipline of mapping out better ways of operating, was when that opportunity arrives, we're ready to jump on it. And so that's like, yes, we're ready to take on that and make that, make a little bit of a difference to the long term as well.
Yeah, I think, and that's what I found across the board as part of this journey was analysis paralysis, where you're just like, I just don't know where to begin, and what if I make the wrong move, so on and so forth. It doesn't, as long as they're there, to be honest with us, with anyone else, as long as the projects you're working with or the calculator you're using provides you with genuine insights, that's all you need. You'll often hear in me, there's different technologies. One is carbon capture. They suck it out of the air and they push it down into the rock. Incredible. But then people go, that's not working better. You need to do trees. It's like, everyone just needs to do bits and pieces and we'll get there.
I think something's better than nothing is the key takeaway there. It doesn't matter what the project is that you're supporting or how you go about it. It's just as long as you're doing something, I think is the most important part.
Yeah.
And I guess it's probably a good segue to talk about, like, obviously we've spoken about the researching aspect and we've spoken about the projects that you support and how they're verified. Probably a good segue to talk about the projects we chose to come on board with you guys on to offset our carbon for our first year. We've through Byron's advice, we decided instead of just doing one project that we would support a couple of different projects to sort of spread the load instead of just taking our total amount of carbon and just pumping it all into one project. We looked at spreading it over 3 projects to sort of, I guess, balance it a little bit so that if one underperforms, hopefully the other 2 offset it and so on. But yeah, the first one that we sort of took on board was a renewable energy project with wind power. So do you want to fill us in a little bit on that one, Byron?
Yeah, sure. So it's, I think there's 40 turbines in Pradesh in India. And so basically it's removing on an annual basis the best part of 200,000 tons of CO2, which is phenomenal. And what you do is you're actually, Patrick, you and the team will actually go and buy the ability to offset your carbon production in that particular project. But also what it's doing, and talking about these benefits that go far beyond just carbon offsetting, benefiting like 1,000 different people in the local villages. It's put, I think it's around 30 kilometers worth of roads in. Now that is to get people from the airport past the village to the project. But it's the mere fact that the infrastructure is starting to evolve, and it's their schooling goes in, and these 1,000 people are having children, and they need homes. So it's just constant infrastructure being developed around education, and I think that's to me that I find, you can tell, I get excited by most things, but that I find it quite exciting because it's truly having an impact and it's quantifiable, and I think that's around wind power.
The next one's probably my favorite one
Yeah,
because
go on.
is TerraClean, which is a clean water carbon mitigation project. It's special to me because it's located in Laos, is where this project is. And look, my first overseas holiday was to there. We're going back 15, 18 years ago. And when we were there, it was quite unusual for Westerners to be there. And so it was kind of, you know, a lot of people were like saying hello to us and coming up and wanting photos with us and things. But yeah, it's one of my fondest memories was going to this country and really enjoying it. So seeing that you guys had a project there that benefits people within that area, I just wanted to be a part of that project regardless. It was just something that spoke to me. But yeah, it has a good, obviously it has the ability to help the community. And do you want to fill us in on that component, Byron?
Yeah, just so what they, in this particular project, so contaminated water kills, it's like 80% of households. They have to boil their water. Now, if you think about it, again, the majority of projects are in emerging markets. So that boiling of the water is you've got to go and cut down trees, essentially. If we just cut to the trees, you've got to cut down trees, or they're cutting down saplings, so they never actually get to really be, you know, the tree as such and really hold on to carbon. And they've got to boil that water. And what this basically the TerraClean is enabling filters to put into the dirty water. It filters the water straight away from you. It saves 15,000 tons by the project. It's also, and this is a great one where you've got around 30,000 households that are benefiting from this filter use. So this is just one project of which there are many across Cambodia in these emerging markets. But you have this true impact. But the great thing is it's also teaching or supporting financially the local communities. So in this case, 414's contribution to this project is actually reducing, it subsidizes the cost so everyone can go and get filters. But what it's doing is there are salesmen and women out there actually selling these to the households as well. And then they're generating an income and to start supporting themselves. And then it basically just starts growing out. And that's why with this particular project, it's the broad economic impacts. And they want to be out of here, like they'll always be a support underneath, but they want it to be financially independent in the next 10 or so years. So
now,
again, living broad.
So we have one last project, and unfortunately it has changed slightly. So it's going to be a bit of a surprise for me because the last project that I invested in, unfortunately, was fully funded by the time we went to secure it.
Oh, wow.
So Byron's actually found another one that's a little bit similar. So I'm excited to hear what our last project we've supported is. Do you want to fill us in together about what this last one is?
Yeah, so we're supporting basically 300,000 hectares in the Amazon basin in Brazil. And again, that is not only, so it's stopping deforestation, but also they've got former cleared land, which they're funding back off farmers, and they're rebuilding rainforests, which means also swamp lands. And if just to focus on the carbon, I mean, that's a huge amount of area, but it's also going to be patrolled. We've seen a lot of news around the deforestation of Brazil. So this is funding basically patrols to stop this particular area of land from being deforested. But funnily enough, all the marshlands that they have an impact on as well, mangroves are one of the highest absorption for carbon or greenhouse gases in the world. So they're funding and they're helping basically grow through to maturity mangroves around the Amazon basin as well. It's in the same space. So that's fantastic, and huge employment opportunities off the back of this for local teams, but also I think the depth of employment. So you've got security, you've also got people managing the teams that are basically maintaining or planting the forests. You've got nurseries being built. And again, you're getting people into the specialization of seed collection, germination. So I could go on for a while. There's many different layers to this project, Patrick, and I think it's similar to the other one we had, but it's just larger, much larger in scale.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's it. We just want to be out there supporting and knowing that if everyone can get behind us and just do something little or start their journey, that a heap of people doing a little thing is better than no one doing anything. And hopefully 100%. Even people listening today can understand that. And if there is people out there that have been listening along today that would like to learn more about how maybe they can offset their own personal carbon, what's the best way to go about it, Byron? Is it to head to your website, or what? How do we go forward for people?
I think if people, so they could head to Climagap, CLIMAGAP.com. And also you'll have a contact form on there. You can reach out to myself, or Patrick reach out to you if they're within your network as well. And I think exactly what you said, no business is too small to start the journey. It's just a matter of having a budget, and just we can talk through what it is you want to support and what you want to achieve. That's sort of the foundation.
Definitely. And look, if you are listening, I'm more than happy to be the bridge between Byron and yourself, because I'm pretty passionate. This guy is just infectious, and his excitement that he brings in regards to this is amazing. Byron wasn't the first company that I approached. I think there was 3 companies I reached out to begin with, and I just didn't feel like they were doing what they said they were doing. And then after speaking to Byron, I knew that this was the way we were going. So you'll learn pretty quickly through chatting directly with him that he's passionate about his product, and he's passionate about, helping the rainforest and helping all these other communities be able to achieve a better result. So reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with him, or head directly to his site and we'll go from there.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for being part of our podcast today, Byron. Hopefully we didn't scare you too much. We're really excited to be working with you, and obviously excited to see what the futures hold for both our companies. So fingers crossed this is not the end of the journey, but just the beginning, and really we can ramp up from here and really push forward.
Absolutely. It's been great. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
You have been listening to The Property Pod, recorded and edited by 414 Media House in conjunction with 414 Property Code.
This podcast is general information only, and the thoughts and views expressed is the opinion of our panel, and listeners should always seek then use their own investigation into any topic we discuss to ensure they fully understand their own situation.
It does not constitute and should not be relied on as purchasing, selling, financial or investment advice or recommendations, express or implied, and it should not be used as an invitation to take up any agent or investment services. No investment decision or activity should be undertaken on the basis of this information without first seeking qualified and professional advice.